Welcome to the Urban Herald. Today, we're pulling you into a story, a really hidden tragedy, a science secret, buried for decades right in the heart of Ireland. And it's only now being fully unearthed. As your guides, the team here at the Urban Herald, we're diving deep into what is a really profound and, frankly, heartbreaking historical chapter. We're focusing our investigation today on the Tuam mother and baby home mass grave scandal. Just a shocking institutional revelation, isn't it? Approximately 800 infants and young children buried in unmarked graves over nearly 4 decades, and these unidentified remains hidden for over 65 years, a silent testament to a past people tried to forget. So our mission as the Urban Herald team for this deep dive is to trace that journey, from the tragedy's concealment right through to its international exposure. We need to explore the painful historical context, understand the damning official findings, and delve into the unprecedented forensic excavation that's actually happening right now. It started in July 2025. We really aim to restore some dignity to the forgotten and provide answers.
Helping you understand not just what happened, but why it matters, and crucially, how Ireland is finally really reckoning with its past. So let's start there. The raw numbers tell a shocking story, but where does the unraveling really begin? At its core, we're talking about the discovery of approximately 800 infants and young children buried in unmarked graves at the Bon Secours mother and baby home. It's almost unimaginable that these tiny remains were hidden away for over 65 years.
Right. And central to this whole story and how it even got international attention is the work of a local historian, Catherine Corless. She's really the one who brought this tragedy to global attention back in 2014. And what's fascinating is that it started as, a fairly simple historical research project for her, but it slowly, surely evolved into this huge, comprehensive Tuam mass grave excavation that just began, as you said, in July 2025. And for the families, the grieving families, this is so much more than just history, isn't it? It's a profound search for lost siblings, and ultimately for the dignity they were just never given. To really get a handle on what happened in Tuam, we absolutely have to understand the Ireland of that time, the societal fabric. You really can't understand the scandal without looking at the profound influence of the Catholic Church in post-independence Ireland. The Church had enormous power over social policy. It effectively created what some historians call an architecture of containment, which sounds quite clinical, but it was basically a system designed to hide away anyone deemed morally transgressive. And that especially meant unmarried mothers.
And the scale of this, when you look at it, it's just immense. Between 1922 and 1998, roughly 56,000 unmarried mothers and 57,000 children passed through 18 of these mother and baby homes across Ireland. Let's think about that for a second. That's not just a few isolated cases. It points to a vast state-sanctioned shadow system. Operating for decades, it effectively privatized moral judgment and control. And while these places were supposedly offering refuge, they often became places of punishment, of shame. Families frequently, coerced women into them, didn't they, to avoid scandal?
Exactly. And the societal context was incredibly unforgiving. You have to remember Ireland's 1937 constitution. It recognized only families founded on marriage. That automatically left unmarried mothers and their children legally, socially, completely marginalized. Children born outside wedlock were labeled illegitimate. That status denied them basic rights. They couldn't even legally use their mother's surname except sort of informally by usage. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What happens when societal morality gets so rigid that it dictates the entire structure of care, or maybe more accurately, the lack of care? So let's focus in on the Bon Secours mother and baby home in Tuam specifically. This particular institution, it operated from 1925 right up to 1961, and it was on the site of a former workhouse, which already tells you something. The Bon Secours sisters, a Catholic nursing order, converted this old Victorian building into what locals just called the home.
The home and the conditions inside, they were incredibly harsh. Women were actually required to work for at least a year unpaid as sort of reimbursement for the services. They were separated from their children. The children stayed until adoption could be arranged, and this often happened without the mother's real consent. And there was this added, deeply disturbing cruelty too. Women who'd given birth twice, they were often transferred directly to nearby Magdalene laundries, which were basically punitive institutions, often involving forced labor. It was punishment for recidivism, as they termed it.
And the mortality rates at Tuam. They were truly shocking. Between 1925 and 1961, a child died at the Tuam home roughly every 2 weeks. Official records show 796 children died there during its 36 years of operation. The causes listed include things like TB, convulsions, measles, whooping cough, even malnutrition. But here's the detail that just sends a chill down your spine. Only 2 of those 796 children received proper burials in nearby cemeteries. The remaining 794, they just disappeared from official records. Poof, gone.
That detail.
794 children just disappearing from the records. It's a profound void, isn't it? And Catherine Corless's determination to fill that void, it really started with childhood memories and, as she put it, a guilty conscience. She remembered this sort of casual cruelty shown to kids from the home, like copying classmates by wrapping a stone in a sweet wrapper and giving it to a girl from the home, who eagerly took it thinking it was a treat. How did that kind of personal guilt fuel such a relentless investigation?
Yeah, that experience clearly stayed with her. Haunting, really. Then after taking a local history course in 2012, she just dedicated years to it, systematically searching through records. Libraries, churches, council offices, you name it. Her method was exhaustive, meticulously cross-referencing death certificates with burial records, trying to piece together this puzzle that, frankly, many others had either ignored or just forgotten about.
And that painstaking, dogged research led her to the breakthrough. She discovered that while 796 children had death certificates, there were just no corresponding burial records for almost all of them. This huge discrepancy didn't just expose the Tuam scandal, it actually prompted the wider investigation into Ireland's whole network of mother and baby homes. It really shows the power of persistent, focused digging, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And here's something else critical that Corliss uncovered in earlier failure. Back in 1975, two young boys playing near the site actually stumbled upon human remains in what looked like an old septic tank. But incredibly, this discovery was dismissed at the time as famine victims and then basically covered up and forgotten. It really raises a big question about institutional accountability, doesn't it? And the collective memory of a nation. How can something like that just be pushed aside?
So, with Catherine Corless's revelations now out there, undeniable.
Yeah.
What was the official response from the Irish government? How did they react?
Well, the government's response was to set up the Mother and Baby Homes Commission of Investigation in 2015. It was led by Judge Yvonne Murphy, and its mandate was huge to investigate misconduct across the entire network, not just Tuam. Its final report came out in January 2021, and the findings were devastating, truly devastating. Around 9,000 children died across all 18 institutions investigated. That's about 15% of all the children born or admitted into these homes, nearly double the national infant mortality rate for other children at the time. The report described an appalling level of infant mortality, and its conclusion was stark. These homes did not save the lives of illegitimate children. In fact, they appear to have significantly reduced their prospects of survival.
9,000 children across 18 institutions. That figure, almost unimaginable. What does it say about the societal attitudes back then, that such death rates were tolerated, even it seems normalized? And for Tuam specifically?
For Tuam, yes. Test excavations they did in 2016 and 2017 confirmed significant quantities of human remains, right where Corliss indicated, and they dated from the home's operational period. Forensic analysis revealed the ages ranged from about 35 fetal weeks up to 2 or 3 years old. Tiny children.
So in response to all this, the head of government, the Taoiseach Manchel Martin, he gave a formal state apology, right?
Yes, on January 13th, 2021, he acknowledged, and I quote, "The state failed you, the mothers and children in these homes," and he admitted that Ireland had embraced a perverse religious morality and control. Strong words.
But how are those words received? I imagine reactions were mixed.
Very mixed, yes, from survivors and advocacy groups. While, acknowledgement is important, many critics argued that concrete action, things like compensation, are much more crucial. The government did commit to a restorative recognition scheme and, importantly, the legal framework needed for the Tuam excavation.
But you're right, no apology can ever fully restore what was lost. It feels like these exhumations, though, they show Ireland is trying finally to reckon with its past.
And that reckoning is now in a really unprecedented phase. This current Tuam mass grave excavation, it's happening under the Institutional Burials Act 2022. The government set up a new body, the Office of the Director of Authorized Intervention, ODAIT for short, and Daniel McSweeney was appointed its director in May 2023.
Okay, ODAIT. And their mandate, their job, it sounds incredibly complex. Forensic standard, excavation, recovery, post-recovery analysis, all to international standards. The goal is to recover all the human remains, try to get DNA identification where possible, and then arrange for respectful reburial. It's a monumental undertaking.
It absolutely is. And the technical challenges are immense. You've got commingled remains, that means bones from different individuals all mixed together, very difficult to separate. Plus, many remains are from infants, very young children, which makes identification incredibly hard. So to tackle this, they've assembled a really impressive international team. Experts from Colombia, Spain, the UK, Canada, Australia, the US. people with vital experience from similar mass grave situations around the world.
And the hope for identification rests largely on DNA, right? There's a comprehensive DNA program run by Forensic Science Ireland. Eligible family members, people with reasonable grounds to believe they had a relative there, can provide samples. The big challenge, though, I guess, is DNA degradation over 60, 70, 80 years.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
a major hurdle. But they are hopeful.
About 80 people have provided samples so far, which feels like a significant start.
It is. And the emotional impact on these families, it's palpable every single day. Anna Corrigan, a woman who discovered she actually had two brothers who died in the home, she said something that really sticks with you. She said, they got no dignity in life and they got no dignity in death. It just raises this profound question for all of us, really. How do we, as a society, provide dignity now when it was so brutally denied for so long?
It's a heavy question. And the forensic work itself sounds remarkable. State-of-the-art stuff. Strict controls, 24-hour security, a huge 2.4-meter hoarding around the site. And this highly specialized team, forensic archaeologists, osteologists, anthropologists, crime scene experts, you mentioned they're even using a new biochemistry method, determining biological sex from tooth enamel peptides.
That's right. It's quite innovative, especially useful for infant remains where other methods are difficult.
And the whole project, its scale, it's expected to take about 2 years.
Approximately 2 years, yes. It's a long, meticulous process. And looking forward, a critical question is memorialization. What happens after the excavation? There's already a memorial garden there, with a Virgin Mary statue, flowers, little toys left by people, and that simple white plaque just listing 796. But plans for a permanent, more substantial memorial are underway, crucially with input from survivors, families, and the local community. There are also annual remembrance events, like a lantern walk from nearby Mayo to Tuam, which have become important community rituals.
And the legal side of this, the ethical implications, they're significant too. This Institutional Burials Act 2022, it sets a precedent, doesn't it? But I wonder, while it focuses on burial practices and forensic recovery, which is vital, does it fully address the broader issues? The institutional abuse, the systemic discrimination that allowed this horror to happen in the first place. It leaves you thinking about the deeper changes needed, right?
That's a very important point. And Tuam, as horrific as it isn't an isolated incident in Irish history. It's part of a much broader reckoning with Ireland's institutional past. That includes the industrial schools, the Magdalen laundries, the county homes, a whole network of places where vulnerable people suffered. And all this is happening, it's important to remember, amidst profound social changes in Ireland since the 1960s. Things like the repeal of the divorce ban, the legalization of contraception, and more recently, abortion. And of course, the dramatic shrinking of the Catholic Church's once pervasive social influence.
And as we've watched this unfold in Ireland, the powerful universal lesson that really jumps out is how unchecked institutional power without proper oversight, without accountability, it almost inevitably leads to the abuse of the most vulnerable people in society. It seems like a recurring theme, sadly.
It does. And another key insight here is how Tuam has resonated globally. It's drawn comparisons to similar abuses and injustices in other countries. And forensic methods being developed and honed in Tuam, particularly around DNA identification and how they engage with families, they're being watched very closely by experts dealing with mass graves worldwide. The scandal has also shone a light on Ireland's historical role in international adoption networks, raising even more questions about past injustices that cross national borders.
So as the team here at the Urban Herald looking back at all this, it feels like the Tuam mother and baby home scandal really epitomizes that systematic failure, the failure of institutions that should have protected society's most vulnerable. Those 796 children who died at Tuam, they weren't just victims of disease or poverty. They were victims of a social system that deemed them unworthy of basic dignity in life and even in death.
Absolutely. And Catherine Corless's painstaking research, her refusal to let it go, it forced Ireland to confront one of its absolute darkest chapters. And it forced a commitment, however belated, to provide some dignity to those children who were denied it for so long.
Yeah.
The current Tuam mass grave excavation, it's not just an archaeological project, is it? It feels like a moral imperative to acknowledge past wrongs and hopefully to prevent future abuses.
Yeah, the scientific and legal frameworks being set up here, they might well serve as models globally. But the true measure of success, I suppose, will be whether Ireland has truly learned the lessons needed to protect vulnerable children in the future, to make sure this dark chapter is never, ever repeated.
And as that excavation continues, each tiny remain recovered, It represents both an individual tragedy and a massive collective failure. The justice movement, led by survivors and people like Catherine Corless, has achieved remarkable things in forcing institutional accountability. But that broader work, creating a society that genuinely protects its most vulnerable members, that remains ongoing. The memorial garden, when it's finally complete, it mustn't just be a final resting place. It has to be a permanent reminder. A reminder of the devastating cost of institutional failure and societal indifference. It really falls on all of us, doesn't it, to ensure that never again actually holds true for future generations of vulnerable children. So maybe the question for you listening is, what will you take from this deep dive into Ireland's past as you look towards the future?
Thank you for joining the team at the Urban Herald on this important deep dive.